Moses supposes his toes are roses.
See, that's the reaction that I'm talking about.
By the time I even fell in love with him, he was dead. Happy New Year, you guys.
2024.
Woo! Yay! It's honestly, dear listener, the New Year's edition.
Today, we're talking about the things we're leaving behind in 2023 and what things we're bringing with us into 2024.
And we're also talking about musicals, what we love,
and what we'd rather leave behind in 2023.
Welcome to Honestly, Dear Listener. I'm Emily Hatch.
And I'm Carrie Schaefer.
And today, what are we talking about, Carrie? Let's just get it out there.
We're talking about, because, 2024 is just around the corner. So I know, right? We're talking about things that we want to leave behind in 2023 that we don't want to take with us into 2024.
There's a lot of stuff to talk about.
A lot to unpack.
Some good stuff this year. Some weird stuff this year. I don't know.
I hope this is a year that we all just creatively explode, but in a good way. Mm-hmm. And I hope this is a year that will be great. I'm a little worried about it politically, but we don't have to talk about that.
Let's run away from that. Be honest about other things instead.
Yeah, that sounds good.
You guys, something really cool happened last week. I got to see this lady, Carrie, in real life in New York, and we went to Sweeney Todd. We attended the Tale of Sweeney Todd, and some of you guys, you might have seen our picture together sitting there, and it was so great to have you at my house.
I know. I loved it. I'd never been to your house in New York. And I was just telling you before that I'd only ever seen the backgrounds on these videos that we do. And now that I've seen your whole space, I know exactly where you are in your house. And for some reason, that feels very important. It's like the same level. It's kind of like, when you're a kid and you're really close friends with a person if you've seen their parents' bedroom.
And that's a measuring stick that I've not thought of before, but you guys, have you done this? Sorry, just real quick. Because you mentioned this on another episode, and I was like, I've never thought about your parents' bedroom.
It's usually like the inner sanctum of the house that is pretty understood. Like if you're 9, 10, 11, 12, you don't go in there, but like if you're a really good friend, you've seen it. Like I saw your parents' bedroom and now I've seen your house in New York. And now I feel, it lessens the FOMO. I don't know why I feel FOMO about, I just like to see, I like to imagine someone in their space when I'm talking to them on the phone. It makes me feel like I have my bearings.
See, and I love that too. I've just never extended that idea to parents' bedrooms. But you know what? This is one of the reasons I love you. We did not only go to Sweeney Todd. We watched my favorite musical ever, which is Singing in the Rain. And I was the weirdo that was like, oh, I love this part. And then I had to stop myself from doing the entirety of Moses supposes his toes are roses along with them. And now Carrie will know what I mean when I say, I can't stand them.
Okay, so I'd never seen it, which is kind of weird because I grew up doing musicals and being in shows and all that bit. But I've seen the classics. Not that Singing in the Rain is not a classic because it is. But like anything my mom was into, I've seen. Sound of Music, duh. Like she played that on repeat at my house. I'm trying to think of other musicals that she was into. Beauty and the Beast. She's super into that.
Was she an Oklahoma fan?
No.
Okay.
No. I was in Oklahoma.
I was going to say, I saw you in that. You were so good.
Really?
Many a New Day.
Oh my gosh. I do not like that musical. There's so much going on in it that is not okay. I mean, like somebody convincing somebody else to commit suicide is like really dark and something that I don't like that. I don't like
Yeah.
that. And I don't like that that character succeeds in the end and the other one doesn't. Like,
Hmm.
that's not cool.
Oh my God. Rodgers and Hammerstein is the worst in so
Yeah.
many ways. It's like old Disney. Like when
Mm-hmm.
you really consider, okay, if you if you've been to Disneyland, they have all of the old fairy tale rides
Mm-hmm.
and they're all dark as fuck. They're like it's like, oh look, some dwarves. Dee 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 dee. And then it's like, oh my God, there's a lot of witch here. There's a lot of evil cackles. There's a lot of weirdness. Dark, 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 dark. Oh, look, some cute
Mm-hmm.
little animals and a lady who gets kissed while she's sleeping. And then,
Without consent.
yeah, and then it's the end of the ride, and you're like, what happened? Pinocchio, same thing. Like, why barrels are going to fall on me? He's a donkey. What's going on? Oh,
Yeah.
look, a happy kid. What? Like, Rodgers and Hammerstein is the musical version of that. Like,
Yeah.
death, racism,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
all, it's just like, and then they're like, when I marry Mr. Snow, and then have an emotionally and physically abusive relationship with him. It's just a lot of weird, yeah.
I had never seen Singing in the Rain. It was not part of my mom's canon of movies, and so I had never seen it, which is a huge, huge loss on my part because it was actually really good and
It's so
entertaining
cute.
the whole
And
time.
okay, so my dad, like, we watched musicals. Oh, that's it. That's kind of all I was allowed to watch growing up, and I dug it. Um, so when you grow up like that, you have massive crushes on these people in these movies, and then you find out that they're dead. And that is heartbreaking. Like, oh my God. Okay, so everyone's probably like, because you know who these people are. Like, I'm sure she has a crush on Gene Kelly. No, wrong. I have a huge crush on Donald O'Connor.
The other guy.
Make him laugh. That guy, his eyes. I loved his dancing style. He's so cute and weird, like a little happy mouse or something. I don't know. Anyway, but dead, of course.
Very
By the
dead.
time I even fell in love with him, he was dead. So
Mhm.
sad. That's
I
a
know.
disappointment for kids.
I can only aspire to have people fall in love with me after I'm dead. I mean, I feel like that's when you know you've made it.
But you don't know because you're dead.
Well, right. But like, I want people to fall in love with me after I'm dead.
I'm just going to assume as I'm dying that people will love me more after.
Yeah.
Okay, that was dark.
Yeah, it just keeps
Anyway,
getting better.
So we saw each other. We saw that movie. I got to cook for you, which also, I don't know if you guys realize, but I love cooking. It was so great to cook for my friend.
I loved it.
It's
It was
just
so
awesome.
delicious.
And I was like, you could just call your husband and kids and say, Mom's not coming home.
I know. And it was a really quick turnaround. It was a 3-day trip. We saw Sweeney Todd. We did a couple of other things. I'd never been to Astoria. I'd never been to Sunnyside. I'd never been to Queens. So now I can mark that off my list. So yeah.
It was so fun.
Speaking of musicals, yesterday I was talking with a group of friends and we were like, we need to watch musicals because I feel like I'm so far behind. People are bringing up these musicals like Guys and Dolls, never seen it. Fiddler on the Roof, never seen it. Like these major, major musicals that are like, what do you mean you're a musical theater and you haven't seen Seven Brides for Seven Brothers? Like, I see, that's it. That's the reaction that I'm talking about.
I love
That has
that
been me my
musical.
entire life. So anyway, I want to, things that I would like to have in 2024, I want to go through the canon of classic musicals, but I don't just want to watch them. I want to have a rubric because I don't just want to say I liked it or I didn't like it. I want to have criteria. Like I want to know, I want to research the cultural context behind when it came out. And I want to figure out, is the casting right on? Is the music good or not good? And why? Is the singing, acting, dancing good, and why? I want to really, are there, and this is what I can't stand about old musicals. Musical songs from musicals used to be the top 40 of the day back in the day. So they, I guess, this is what I've read about, they'll write a song and then they'll be like, okay, let's stick it in this musical so that it can have some airtime and get popular and all that stuff. And so then you have the main storyline of a musical, and you'll have these little random offshoot musical storylines that don't really go anywhere, but it's because they had to put those in to make the top 40 song of the day fit. And I don't like it.
Guys and Dolls. There were quite a few like jazz numbers in that were popular songs. Brigadoon, like Almost Like Being in Love, is a jazz standard that was in the show. And I never knew if it was like, which came first, the chicken or the egg, like the song or the musical, and were they popular because or whatever.
My friends and I were talking about musicals, and then it jogged my memory. And for a second, I was like, oh, yeah, I had a friend that did this. But it wasn't a friend. I heard it on another podcast. But I'm still going to share it here because you might not have listened to that episode of This American Life.
Let's do it.
Okay, so there was somebody out in the world that had seen The Sound of Music. But back in the day, kids that are listening, we didn't have streaming. We didn't have DVDs. We had tapes, VHS tapes. And The Sound of Music is so long that it required not one tape, but two. So her family had only ever seen the first tape. And they'd never seen the second tape. So they didn't see the Nazis. They didn't see, all they knew was like happy, happy, happy songs. And then Georg and Maria have this fight after they fall into the lake thing. And then she sneaks out because Baroness Schrader's a bitch and is like, maybe this world isn't to you. So then she goes back to the Abbey, and that's the end of the story, which is, and I guess the girl was like, oh, that's kind of sad. But like, great musical. She'd never seen the second tape and didn't even know that it existed. Right? I know.
That's
my mind is
crazy.
blown.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that story. I would also like to point out what you said right before you told it, which is that you thought it was your friend and then realized it was a podcast. Have you guys done that? Because I have totally. Have you ever thought something happened to you and then remembered that it was just a story someone told you about their life when you were a kid and had just like decided it was your story? There are like a couple things that I'm like, did that happen to me? Or was that one of my friends that I just felt so connected to that I had decided it happened to me? I could like picture it so vividly. I love that so much.
And as far as like podcasts go, I do that too with thinking that it happened to me or a friend, because I feel like podcasts are friends. Books and movies. And I mean, if it's a good something or other, it really pulls you in to being like, wow, I really know these people.
Yep. I lived there.
Yeah.
In that place with those people. Those are my friends.
Totally.
Yeah. Isn't that, I love that so much. So your 2024 is going to be more musically with a rubric.
With a rubric. I want to sit down with an actual Truth be told, here's the deal. I don't really enjoy musicals all that much. Which is weird because I'm in them, and I'll spend money flying up to see them, which is out of the way for me, but is important enough to see, So I don't love older musicals in general. I love what they're doing with new musicals. Hamilton, can't get enough. Wicked, OMG. Like, everything is so tasteful and everything furthers the storyline. There's none of these like lulls.
Where it's like, I just said I was happy, and that's a simple emotion to understand, but I'm going to sing a 6-minute song about being happy.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that actually. And this is probably really bad. Like, I have a lot of musical theater friends that listen to soundtracks. I am not a person. I have like 2 or 3 shows ever that I
Mhm.
just like the music and will listen to. And overall, the music is just part of the show to me.
Yeah.
It's not like a standalone I want to listen to. And I think part of it's like the voices are really like meant to carry in like this like pingy kind of way,
Mhm.
super bright voices. It's awesome, but it's not something I prefer to listen to on its own.
Yeah.
So
And that's
there's our
okay.
terrible confession of there's stuff about musicals we don't like, but 2024, you're, you're bringing it in.
I am.
What's
I'm going to bring it in.
what's something you want to leave behind?
Oh, in 2024. I want to leave behind this refrain in my brain that goes, but I used to be able to not exercise and it was fine. And I never gained any weight and I was so healthy. Or I used to not have to get 8 hours of sleep and it was fine. Like all of these, I still, even though my body is very much like, hey, we're knocking on 40's door, my brain is like, I'm still 24.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that no, your body is aging and that is okay. But because it's aging, we can't do what we used to do. And that is, well, just not take care of our body. Like I have an Apple Watch and I was looking at some of it's great. It's great because you can see a lot of kind of your metrics. You can see your health in numbers in a way instead of being like, I don't know. I'm just going to go off of how I feel, which is also not bad, but it's nice to have numbers behind it. And my numbers are saying, like my VO2 max is like, you're 70. And I'm like, oh,
70 years old.
70 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have the VO2 max of a 70-year-old woman. And that doesn't thrill me. And I know
What does that
it's
mean?
because it means that your VO2 max is how efficient your body is with using the oxygen that it takes in. So hence why I get so winded if I am walking or I get lightheaded when I stand up, et cetera, et cetera. And so I am coming to terms with, hey, if you sit on the couch all day and don't move your body, you're going to have numbers that look like this. And you can do something about it. So that's what I'm going to leave behind in 2023. That's one thing. What about you?
2023 was like a very huge year. I got married. My kid is 19 and is living on their own, and I moved to New York City.
Huge changes.
I did a lot of firsts, like in my music career. I think I need to leave behind for just a brain decision that like huge things don't have to be happening all the time to mean that I am being productive and like an okay human. I think there's this like weirdness that exists within me right now that's like, and I just literally thought of this right now. But that's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, I knew that before, but I've been on like, go, 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 change, 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 like, and thinking I've had to survive 2023 with all these really exciting changes. And I think I want to be able to put a little bow on that and say, yes, bitch, you did it. And now like move into a different time that is like making a home and like finding a community and sitting down and like taking a walk and telling myself it's okay to not be like having 6 different life events happening in 4 months. So yeah, I think I want to leave behind that. It's not that simple, I suppose, but that
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, go big things, like, and just be
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, you know what's going to be big in 2024? The little things, and being able to like move through those things.
Yeah.
That's what I think this focus is for this year,
Mm-hmm.
and leaving behind that, I think.
I love that. I mean, you have had such huge changes in the past year. I mean,
Mhm.
so many of them great changes. Uh, they're they have a I can't even remember what it's called. It's some kind of scale that talks about stress and like if you've had so many changes in your life,
Mhm.
and some of those changes could be great, but they still stress and tax your body and your brain.
Mhm.
And so it's not surprising to me that, because, we've talked and you have had, some things that you're dealing with. That's not surprising to me at all,
Mhm.
as you as a human being with so many changes that you've had for you to feel that way.
Thank you. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's like the most stressful life events, I think they say, are like moving,
Mm-hmm.
or like your kids graduating, getting married. Like, guess who did that? All of them
Yeah, check,
this
check,
year.
check.
It's like, and then I'm like, well, you're so weird. You're usually so much like happier and like have more energy. So I think I'm gonna, I would say I'd like to leave behind self-criticism in 2023, but I've just really depended on it. So it's gonna take a while to wean me off of that shit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. But that's a big thing. But I think the expectation of having to do that much.
Mhm.
Yeah. I just want friends now, a little community of people.
Totally. I get
Mhm.
it. That is something that I am going, that is another thing I want to leave behind is during the pandemic, I think we all got trained to stay home and to do home things. And I love home. I love my bed. I love reading and I love all those like cozy, snuggly, warm things.
Mhm.
But I've gotten so into that, I think, because of the pandemic. I mean, we all practiced staying away from people.
Mhm.
And, like I shared on an episode before, my husband Seth was like, "Oh, I feel like you're very much at home a lot, and that's great. But like, maybe you need to get out like you did before the pandemic to see people, because I have a lot of people in my life, but they're online. Like you,
Mhm.
you don't live in Nashville with me, so I don't see your body and your head and
You
and your
just see my
face.
head by itself. It's
I
like,
don't, yeah, I don't see it in real life. And I want to
mhm.
see it in real life, but you don't live here. So
Mhm.
I need friends. And I do have a couple very special friends here. I wish that I saw them more.
Mhm.
But you can't put all of your friendship requirements on one person. So I need people that are outside of that. So I ended up going to this meetup and we played some board games. Like it was a meetup from meetup.com and it was great. And then I think I said this on a previous episode. I cried afterward.
Mhm.
I cried because, and my brain was like, why are you crying? And I think my body was like, because we haven't been around people for a while, it feels like. So
Mhm.
I want to leave behind some of the programming and some of the things that I practiced during COVID.
Mm.
Not the hand washing, that's going to stay with me,
That's good.
but
Yep.
the
And
not
when
being
it's
around
like I
people.
stay home.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
That stuff's good. I totally know. And it's weird too, because I mean, I'm sure our listeners are relating to this. It's like the way that we do things has changed. Cause like
Yes.
I've been around some people, but it's not the same.
Hmm.
Like there, I feel like I had communities of people that I would see just like go to people's houses or like whatever. And I still did that recently, but it's like this different shift. And also, you went through a big move to Nashville in pandemic time too. So like you're in a new place
Mhm.
post pandemic. So it's almost like the effects of that loneliness that from moving didn't have time to actually like come to light because it was time to not see anyone. So it makes sense. You're kind of like dealing with both, right?
Yeah.
You're dealing with that post pandemic stuff, but you're also dealing with moving
Yep.
now,
Yeah.
3 years later, right?
Yeah. Big changes. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Big changes.
Mm-hmm.
So what's another thing that you're, well, before I move on, I want to say community is huge. Community is when you feel connected to someone. I think that's one of the biggest predictors of longevity is how well you're connected with people and how you feel seen and how you feel known. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but here's the thing too is like I don't go to church and I'm not in school anymore,
Mm-hmm.
really. And I don't like how do you meet people when you're 40?
Mm.
So, listeners, this is one thing. Do us a solid. Let us know if you are of an age, or even if you're not of an age, whatever age you are, if you're like, this is how I meet people and this is where I find my community. Will you please let us know? Because we are in need of community, both of
Mm-hmm.
us.
Yeah. And I think, maybe next week we can share some of the answers and stuff from that question, because I think I remember being like, well, a couple things. One of my favorite memes, I think I've said this before, is that no one talked about Jesus's biggest miracle, which was having 12 close friends in his 30s.
Yes.
Uh,
Oh my gosh, hysterical.
I just remember being like thinking when my kiddo was little that my kid could just go up to someone at the park and be like, "Hi, I like your shoes. You want to play?"
Mhm.
And I just want to be like, "Hey, you like to do stuff. I like to do stuff. Want to play?" And
Mhm.
then I've actually had times in my adult life where I was like, "I just think you're real cool. Want to play?" And they're like, "No." Like, "Oh."
Yeah,
Because it's
I do.
weird to be a grown-ass woman being like, "I'm lonely." But
I did that
it's
one
just
time. There was a mixer thing, social deal at my kid's school. And I was talking to this girl. She was super nice. And we were trying to get to know each other. And then I just came out with it. I was like, hi, yeah, I'm really lonely. I need friends. Do you want to be my friend? And bless her little heart. She was all, yeah. But like I think I went too. Can you be too vulnerable? Because I think maybe I went weird. Maybe I made it weird. I think I made it weird.
I think it's weird to be that vulnerable, but I don't think it should be.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that just some degree getting close friends in your like 30s and 40s is like dating. And so you don't really want the person, it's like some social thing, or like you don't really want the person that's like, I I need a companion and I need to have sex. You're like,
Yep.
oh, that's not attractive. So I don't have any friends. It makes people be like, why? You know?
Exactly. And especially if you're older, it's like it feels like if you don't have friends, there's a reason. Kind of like if
Yeah.
you're not married by 40
There's
already,
something wrong with
there's
you.
something wrong with you. Like
And
what skeletons are in your closet?
both of those things aren't true, but I do
Yeah.
think it's like a similar, like, why? What's wrong with you? Kind of reaction.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do you move somewhere and get a community of friends? Actually, so last night I went to an improv show with some of my husband's friends, It was so much fun, and I really want to do improv again. And um, I, when I moved to Denver, I became like part of an improv group, and that's how I got a job because someone there worked for a lawyer and was like, "Do you want to work for this lawyer?" And I was like, "Yeah." And that's how I created a lot of my community in Denver was through improv. And so I don't know that I'm terribly good at it, but
Oh,
I
but
think
that
I might want to take some classes uh, and be like a part of that community. I love that's vulnerable. That's
Mhm.
and making shit up with people and just being like, oh, and having a place to show up and be
Mhm.
weird with other humans. That sounds really good to me.
Can
And
anyone
it's
be bad at improv though?
yes,
I feel like if somebody, and I've never done improv, so I
I
don't
think
know,
anyway.
but like I feel like the only way to be bad at improv is by not sending the ball back. You know how it's the whole like you have to say yes and for anyone that's not up on improv, will you explain the whole like yes and thing?
It's basically that you keep the chain of communication and agreement going. So you never want to be on stage with someone who you say, "Oh, I see you have a fancy coat on." And they're like, "No, I don't." Like the story stops there.
Right.
Or like, "No, I'm this person." Like you whatever they do, you're just like, "Oh yeah, I got it at the whatever." And then you keep going in your weird story. So it's this kind of community of the yes and thing is like I'm taking what you're doing and I'm like sending it back, like you said, throwing the ball back and like listening. And I think that's you can be bad at improv, in my opinion. Like I'm a freaking genius of improv.
Yeah, you are.
Um, but another way you can be bad at improv is not listening. Um, and I've joked recently that I feel like it turns out that anxious people who have a hard time staying in the present moment might be bad at improv. Guess what I've been struggling with lately? Because I've been in those classes where I'm like, I'm thinking about what I'm supposed to say, and then you don't listen. You don't like stay there because you're just worried about if something like, should I do something? And that can make you a little bad at improv. So I think
Interesting.
that would be fun though, like learning more about how to let go of that.
That's
Yeah.
interesting to me that being bad at improv, because I think most people would define being bad at improv as not being funny. Oh,
Mhm.
you're not funny, you'd be bad at improv. Um, but actually, maybe it's different. Maybe being a bad listener makes you bad at improv. That's fascinating to me.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah,
Yeah.
because like, so last night, one of the guys that we were hanging out with does improv. He's taking the UCB classes, which Upright Citizens Brigade, which
Mm.
I want to take. And a lot of people I love in the comedy world have taken those classes anyway. He was saying that one of the guys in his class is like, he's grown a lot because when he first got there, he was just trying so hard to be funny that he would just like bulldoze anything to because of what he was thinking about to make him funny. So he just like spit out, you know, misogynistic things. I was in a class with a guy like that too. It's like, is always just going to come back to porn? Is that really what we're doing here?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like nothing wrong with porn, but that's not what we're talking about right now. And you're not listening to the conversation and you're just being like bull in a porn china closet. Then you're that's not great. So
Yeah.
also though, I didn't mean to get off on a jag about improv, but I do think it's interesting and cool, and I think this is good for people as well that you're not going to be the funny one or the clever one every time.
Mm.
And I think there's something great about that you can learn from too, because you have to give, like, you have to sometimes be the person who sets the ball for the spike for somebody else,
Right.
and sometimes you're that the whole show,
Yeah.
you know? So anyway,
So you have to be
community.
generous sometimes, be willing to share.
Yep.
That's so
Or just be the guy that's sitting in the classroom being like, and
uh-huh.
that's all you did.
Just waving.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
So,
Interesting. So you want
yeah,
community. You want to leave behind communitylessness.
yes.
Yes.
A person experiencing no community.
Yeah.
I want to leave that behind.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What's another thing you want to leave behind in 2023?
Mm. Oh, the idea, this is like also going to take some time. The idea that I could like fuck up who I'm supposed to be.
Mm.
Like, you're in New York, you're supposed to be this, or you're supposed to be famous. And we've talked about that some before. I would really like to leave behind the idea that I could fuck up living.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
I don't have a big plan for that, but I am getting used to nurturing and saying, you're enough. So I would like to bring 2024 into a significant percentage higher of feeling like I'm enough and leaving behind the idea that I could, just by existing as a normal person, fuck something up. I'd like to leave that behind.
How do you do that?
I mean, lately it's been catching myself, like catching myself being like the self-talk stuff and just being like, no, we're okay the way we are. And trying to put aside that constant nattering and saying, thank you, no, I'm good. It's practice because and I have weeks where I'm real bad at it. And then I have weeks where I'm like, oh, I'm okay. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a big one.
Good one. That's a big one.
Yeah. You got anything else?
I do. I want to leave behind in 2023 a sense of feeling like I don't have control. And here's what I mean. I feel like I will always demur to the other person. And even in things like, where do you want to go for dinner? And I'm like, first thing out of my mouth before I even think about anything is, I don't know, what do you want to do? Because I so badly want the other person to feel comfortable and have what they want. And most of the time, that is how I feel. I really don't care. But I want to give myself the choice. I want to stop the whole feeling. I want to stop the gut reaction that is, I don't know, what do you want? And instead check in with myself and say, do I have a preference? Because this person is asking for my preference. They're asking for me to put a nickel in the machine, put anything out there. And I automatically bypass any choice that I have in my haste to get to I want to make the other person comfortable. So in that way, I feel like I don't give myself choices. Maybe instead of control, that's not it. I don't allow myself choices because I so badly want the other person to feel comfortable. When really I think people would feel more comfortable around me if I had an opinion, if I had a thought, if I had any balls to send over to them, kind of like improv. It's like, I feel like when I do that, I stop my energy and I stop the energy for the other person too. Instead of being like, oh, no, play the game. Do a yes and. Yes, I want to at least give myself the ability to choose. And then even after all of that, if I still don't care, fine, cool. I don't know. What do you want? But it's a different energy than not giving myself the choice to begin with. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's not so You don't just want to have like the white flag in your
Mm-hmm.
bag so that you could just be like, this is every time I do this,
Mm-hmm.
instead of like, oh, do I want something? Maybe like asking yourself that question,
Right.
is there something I want, before you say, I
It's
don't.
not bad to want something, but I have made it a bad thing, I think,
Mm.
when other people are involved. Um, yeah, I met with my therapist and she said, one of my homework assignments is work on having agency. Because right now I have not given myself agency in a lot of situations and it's starting to affect me inside, where I am putting myself in a cage because I give myself no options and no choices, and then I start feeling trapped, which makes me want to retreat, which is hence another reason why I'm in bed with a book at 6 o'clock in the evening or 5 o'clock in the evening, because the thought of going out into the outside world and having to send balls back, and play the whole game is exhausting, which I get. I think that's partially an introvert thing, but also I am creating my own prison by giving myself no agency.
So I love that. How do you practice that?
Uh,
Like, I mean, without getting specific,
yeah,
right? Because I'm sure it spills over into lots of areas, but how do you check that out? What
yeah,
does that look like?
that's a good question. So it's kind of, how we almost have to create the vigilance inside when we're improving our self-talk, of being like, whoa, was that kind? And weighing it and seeing if it's kind or not. And then if it's not kind, being like, how am I going to make that kind? How do I rephrase that to make it kind? I think that's the same type of muscle that I want to practice using in this scenario. So if somebody sends the ball to me, which looks like a question, uh, hey, what do you want to do today? There's a ball coming at me.
Mm.
Instead of becoming a wall that the ball bounces off of and then sends it back to the person, I need to catch the ball, which means sit with a question, check in with myself, look at the ball and go, what do I want today? Which is scary. That feels selfish. That's just what's coming up right now. That feels selfish. It's not about you, it's about the other person. But that's not true. Realizing if you have a feeling of something that you want, that's not bad. Sit with the ball, ask yourself, what do I want? Give it a moment. So maybe even saying like because I don't process that quickly sometimes, especially something that's not familiar to me. So maybe saying, I need a second. Can I take a sec? I'm going to take a second to think about that. Take 2 minutes, 4 minutes, whatever. And then after I have given myself the ability, after I have allowed myself the permission to choose, then finally send the ball back.
Mm.
But that is it's exhausting when you're making a change with your brain and you're using that neuroplasticity to really build new structures in there. It's exhausting.
It's so hard.
It is, but it's good. It's good, but it's hard work.
Yeah. It's like physical stuff where you're like, I want to get stronger. And the idea is such a good idea until your legs hurt and you're like, now everything's so hard and all I can think about is this thing. But you are building that strength. And though you're tired, it's worth it for what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think that is really hard. And I think allowing yourself to be like, okay, I did that today. Good job, me. I don't have to do that every single time. I just need to at least start with that thought, right? And be like, maybe this is about lunch and I don't care.
Yeah.
And at least noticing and practicing. That's awesome.
It's the noticing. It's allowing yourself the space to notice. Ah, it is. Anyway, so that's one of the things that I am going to be leaving in 2023, at least maybe not complete. And when I say leaving in 2023, I don't mean that when the ball drops on 2024, that something is going to, I'm transformed in that instance. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I'm setting an intention. I'm setting an intention to practice these things with my will and with my attention in 2024.
I love that. And that's the thing, too. It's like we do this around New Year time, but every day is a day that we can notice things about ourselves and say, this isn't serving me, or this relationship, or this job, or this mentality, or whatever. If you're like one of those, New Year, it's so exhausting. I feel like that I never make resolutions because I feel like, I make them all the time, but I don't make them during New Year's time because I feel like there's this pressure then to like make a bunch, and then often people don't do them at all. But I think the idea, that gentleness and kind of reframe of maybe, I feel like all of ours go together. Like they really are like, I'm noticing that I'm lonely, and I'm noticing that I need this thing, and I notice that I push myself too much. And my goal is to set my intention a little differently so that I can notice that thing and steer it somewhere. You don't have to be like, I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to not be mean in my self-talk. I'm going to you don't have to do that. You can just be like, I'm noticing, because chances are all those things are probably connected to each other and would be made better by leaving some of that icky self-talk behind and bringing some kindness and noticing into your life for the next year.
Absolutely. And that you just so beautifully said exactly what I'm wanting for this new year.
I hope that for me too. And I hope that for our listeners also. Gentleness.
We are curious that we
year.
want to know, what are some things that you're leaving behind in 2023? We just talked about connection so much, and one of the things is connecting with the people that we make things and release out into the world. The people that hopefully, we get to be a part of their lives. How do they feel about what they want to leave behind, and how are you feeling about 2024?
Yeah, tell us.
Yeah.
And then we can get all our stories mixed up, and we can think that your stuff was our stuff, and we can
absolutely
be like, my best friend that I don't know. Just, we can, let's mix our stories all together.
That's right.
Tell us about it.
One big community friendship pot.
That's right.
Yep. Well, how can they get a hold of us, Emily?
You can just DM us on Instagram if you want. You can also email us at honestlydearlistener@gmail.com. Gmail.com, honestly dear listener. That's us. We want to hear from you. Those are some ways you could talk to us.
We would love that. Oh, one more thing that goes with the whole closing out of this episode and closing out of this year. One of my big things that I'm wanting to do in 2024, and that I think you are probably wanting to do in 2024, I'm just speaking for you.
Do it.
Is we want to make this podcast better. And we want to, with the express goal of connecting with our listeners. So I'm taking a chunk out of my time in the week to research how to do that and to constantly be getting better so that we can connect better with you.
Yeah.
Because that's exciting.
So let us know that you're listening. Let us know if you if you want to hear about some stuff that we haven't been talking about,
Yep.
or maybe there's something like every time you hear our podcast, you're like, and this is a perspective, So I sometimes like yell at my on my podcasts and things. What it's a perspective that you want to hear about?
Yep.
Let's or a topic. Let's connect, yo.
Let's do it.
We want to keep getting better, and this is something we are bringing into 2024. Is this podcast? I'm excited for all our improvements in this year coming up.
That's right.
So hit us up, tell us about stuff. You can also give us money.
Oh, yeah.
If you want on Patreon to even better improve our the ability to spend more time doing this and talking to you.
Yep. And find us on honestleaderlistener.com, and there's a link to our Patreon where you can support us. And we so appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for listening.
Yep. Here we go.
Happy New Year, you guys.
2024.